You've heard the narrative, the idea that immigrants are crossing borders not to work, but to abuse a system they never paid into. It's a powerful, emotional story that triggers a deep sense of unfairness in every taxpayer. Today, we are looking at the claim that immigrants are a drain on the American welfare state. We aren't just looking at the math. We are deconstructing the architecture of the myth itself to see how the public is being manipulated.
Just a quick reminder, if you appreciate this in-depth content, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps us bring you more. Now on with the video.
Let's look at the law from 1996 that makes an immediate handout legally impossible. The first pillar of the myth is simple imagery. Someone arrives, walks into an office, and receives a check. But the legal reality is a fortress. In 1996, the United States passed the Welfare Reform Act. This law created a mandatory 5-year waiting period for what the government calls qualified immigrants. Now let's be clear on what that actually means. A qualified immigrant isn't a new arrival. These are people who have already spent years navigating the legal system and thousands of dollars in fees to earn their green cards. They are vetted, permanent residents. And for 5 years after they earn that status, they are legally barred from federal programs like SNAP, which isn't free money, but a restricted credit used strictly for basic groceries. They are barred from TANF, a temporary work contingent bridge for families with children, and they are barred from Medicaid, the health insurance for those with low income. But there's a second lock: financial accountability. For most immigrants, the law uses sponsor deeming, meaning the government counts the income of the person who sponsored them. If that sponsor makes a decent living, the immigrant is disqualified. And for the extraordinary talent green cards, the scientists, artists, and entrepreneurs, the bar is even higher. Trust us, our law firm specializes in this type of visa. To even receive a green card, we have to prove to the U.S. government that our clients are financially self-sufficient and unlikely to need public assistance. They aren't just barred from the safety net, they have to prove they stand far above it. In both cases, the system is designed so that the immigrant or their private sponsor bears the cost, not the American taxpayer. But here is the part the myth ignores. During those 5 years of waiting, these families are full-time taxpayers. They are contributing to Social Security and Medicare with every single paycheck, funding a safety net they are legally prohibited from using. Now, a critic might say, okay, those are specific high-end cases, but isn't the vast majority of the immigrant population still getting into the welfare system? That question is exactly where the narrative manipulation starts. It's a classic hasty generalization. This is a logical fallacy where you take one specific, extreme example, like a refugee fleeing a war zone, and pretend those benefits are a universal perk for every single immigrant who enters the country. But for everyone else, that's a massive logic fail. In our daily work, we represent doctors and engineers on specialty visas like the H-1B. Legally, these people are classified as non-qualified. This means they are strictly barred from federal benefits by the very nature of their visa. They are simply ineligible. The most aggressive version of this myth targets the group at the center of the loudest headlines, the undocumented. The common perception is that these individuals are on the take, receiving government checks while living in the shadows. But the reality is exactly the opposite. Undocumented immigrants are also legally ineligible for almost all federal benefits we've discussed. We've already covered the different categories of immigrants, from permanent residents to those with temporary visas and even the undocumented. This leads to the final claim of the myth, the idea that the few who actually qualify for benefits end up overusing or abusing the system. The data from the Cato Institute tells a different story. When we compare an immigrant and a U.S.-born citizen with the exact same low income, the immigrant relies on the system significantly less. Among those living in poverty, U.S.-born citizens consume an average of $698 in SNAP benefits per year. For immigrants in that same situation, That number is just $310. Even when the financial hardship is identical, the immigrant uses less than half the amount of support. Across nearly all major programs, immigrants are less likely to enter the system, and when they do, they consume a lower dollar value than native-born Americans. When you zoom out from individual behavior to the national budget, you can see the irony of the entire myth. Who is actually paying for whom? The truth is, there is no abuse. It's a massive infusion of cash into the system. A landmark study proved that between 2002 and 2009, immigrants generated a $115.2 billion surplus for the Medicare Trust Fund. To see the contrast, the U.S.-born population generated a $30.9 billion deficit for Medicare. This includes undocumented workers. A peer-reviewed study in Health Affairs tracked 11 years of data and found that unauthorized immigrants generated a net surplus of up to $3.8 billion every single year for the Medicare Trust Fund. The Social Security Administration's chief actuary confirmed that these unauthorized workers have a positive effect on the fund's solvency. So, after looking at the evidence, does the myth of the welfare-abusing immigrant hold up? The verdict: that is completely false and misleading. The myth survives not because it's true, but because it's a convenient tool for fear. It erases the identity of the immigrant as a taxpayer and replaces it with a caricature of a burden. But the law, the math, and the human reality tell a different story, one of contribution, not consumption. As we close this investigation, we leave you with a thought from attorney Chris M. Ingram, who sees the human side of these statistics every day. When people claim immigrants come here to live off the system, they overlook the legal reality. Federal benefits are tightly restricted, and immigrants must work hard and contribute for years before qualifying for anything. In our practice, we see immigrants striving to support themselves, their families, and their communities. They are builders, contributors, and taxpayers, not burdens. In this video series, attorney Chris M. Ingram and his team are debunking false narratives to raise awareness about the positive impact immigrants have always had on making America great. We'd love to read your thoughts in the comments below, so stay tuned for our next video where we take on another immigration myth.